All right, folks. So for the people that think that, we know about Kamala Harris, we know about Joe Biden, we know about their high influence into the deep state, their, cutouts from the CIA, their directives from the intelligence agencies and the military industrial complex. That's how they operate. And people think that Trump is this independent that came out of nowhere. You're going to want to rethink that after watching clips here, because Donald Trump's recent campaign stops, especially discussing Israel, because that's still the hot topic, and no matter what candidate you're voting for, unless possibly Jill Stein, they're all in lockstep for genocide. They're all locked in step for the annihilation of Palestine, the annihilation of Lebanon that's continuing on right now, and they all want advanced warfare into Iran because that's what the military industrial complex wants. That's what the CIA wants. That's what Mossad wants. That's what MI6 wants. And to quote the words of Chuck Schumer, to paraphrase what he said, they have 9 ways Sunday to take anybody down. And they tried to do that with Trump, so maybe Trump is trying to, fold himself in because of the 2 times they tried to assassinate him. So maybe this is a plea deal that he's doing. But here he is at an event here for sponsoring for Israel. And it just sounds like the opening of a Seinfeld episode where they do the stand-up monologue. And Trump is bragging about how he's been bought by the Adelsons. How he's been bought by the most evil, conniving couple in politics. How he's just a complete bought and paid for toy by the Adelsons, by Sheldon and Miriam Adelson. And he's making it into like this comedy bit. Listen to this.
Just as I promised, I recognized Israel's eternal capital and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. Jerusalem became the capital. I also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Miriam and Sheldon would come into the White House probably almost more than anybody outside of people that worked there. And they were always after, and as soon as I'd give them something, always for Israel. As soon as I'd give them something, they'd want something else. I'd say, give me a couple of weeks, will you please? But I gave them the Golan Heights, and they never even asked for it. For 72 years.
So there he is bragging about how Sheldon Miriam Adelson would just walk in the White House like mafia bosses and demand stuff from politicians. Just right off the bat. We couldn't be doing that. We take a step in front of the Capitol, we could be shot and killed or sent to prison. But these two just walk in there and demand, hey, you got to do this for Israel. You got to do this for us. You got to do this for... Otherwise, you might not be running. And Trump, as people think that he's such a, strong, independent voice, that he's going to challenge the deep state, here he is exactly doing what he's doing. Like, I hate to break it to you people. I hate to break it to the mega crowd, but even your beloved Trump is still part of that establishment. You have to understand that Donald Trump is part of them. Donald Trump went to, weddings of the Clintons, and their kids are best friends. He had a TV show on NBC for decades. He is no different than any other corrupt billionaire that you see among us. And here he is just proving that point, where he just admitted that Sheldon and Miriam Adelson just walked in there and demanded that I do stuff for them. They scratch my back, I scratch theirs. And he's bragging about corruption as he keeps stating that he's going to drain the swamp and crush the deep state. I don't see that. I don't see that with Donald Trump. Definitely don't see it with the Democratic Party. I don't see it with them. because the deep state is that powerful, is that corrupted. They are such a high influential again, to restate, to reparaphrase Chuck Schumer's warning on a cable network on national television. You don't want to mess with the intelligence agencies because they have 9 ways Sunday to take anybody down, including the president. So to me, this is a sign that Donald Trump is going to be a regular politician, just like he was the last time. That there's not going to be this miracle, even if he had RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. I'm glad that they're contributing. That shows a bit of unity, that we're seeing 2 former Democrats in line with the Trump campaign. That shows a bit of unity. But does that actually going to involve real change? Probably not. More than likely, I'm predicting, and I don't know how good my predictions are, but Trump may just kick RFK Jr. out the minute he becomes president. Sorry, I just need you for votes. Screw you. Same with Tulsi. Because that is how deeply corrupted the entire system is. And this is him doing a stand-up set, bragging about it.
They've been trying to do the Golan Heights, right? And would come into the White House probably almost more than anybody outside of people that work there. And they were always after, and as soon as I'd give them something, always for Israel. As soon as I'd give them something, they'd want something else. I said, give me a couple of weeks, will you please? But I gave them the Golan Heights, and they never even asked for it. You know, for 72 years, they've been trying to do the Golan Heights, right? And even Sheldon didn't have the nerve. But I said, you know what? I said to David Friedman, give me a quick lesson, like 5 minutes or less on the Golan Heights. And he did. And I said, let's do it. We got it done in about 15 minutes, right?
Jesus, it literally sounds like something out of a mafia film right there. Like, this guy, he didn't even want the Golan Heights. I told him if I take a quick class, bing, bop, boom, I'll have it in 15 minutes, okay? Capiche? Like, honestly, do people honestly think, and I don't mean to breathe the Debbie Downer of all this, because I know people are so dead set on finding that lesser evil. I know we've been told for so many years that the whole purpose of all this, the whole purpose of democracy, is to find the lesser evil. But I gotta tell you, folks, there is no lesser evil. It's all evil. It's all bad. Because no matter who you vote for, they're going to screw you in the end. And that is for certain, even if you had Trump. People like to think that he's some sort of great outsider because of all the times that they tried to lock him up and tried to, put trumped up charges and, indict him for so many ridiculous things. Oh, that's because he's such an outsider, such a great threat. He's not actually that great of a threat. He's actually not that great of a threat. Because he did exactly what the establishment, what the security state, what his rich billionaire donors wanted him to do when he was president. He was good at being a fake populist for the campaign, but then once he got into office, he showed his true colors. He showed that he was one of the guys. He was one of the boys, and he wanted to stick around. He drained that swamp and filled it back in with the creatures at the bottom. And this is proof of it. That he's just going along with the most 2 insanely corrupt people, the same couple of the Adelsons. Which I'm pretty sure Sheldon's dead, so it's just the wife now. But either way, it's still awful. And he's bragging about like it's a comedy routine. Like, they walked in there, they demanded stuff from me, I did favors for them. They, tend to threaten me, but hey, I did the Golem Heights, so that now they owe me. That's why I'm standing here. Kabish, kapoo, it's gonna be great for you guys. But it gets even more interesting because in another rally, and again, a lot of these candidates are definitely in the bank of, being this pro-genocidal freak. They have blood on their hands, every single one of them. And here is Donald Trump saying that he wants to make Israel a bit bigger because it's a little tiny on the map. And with Donald Trump in size, that he's a bit of a freak when it comes to the size of things. And he is declaring that we need to make Israel bigger. Well, how do you make a country bigger? Well, you go invade the surrounding areas and completely annihilate their population, which is what's happening right now. I thought it was to stop another October 7th. I thought it was supposed to free the hostages. But we don't even mention that anymore. We don't even mention about the hostages. Here's this.
We must stand with our friend and partner, the State of Israel. We will, strongly. And you'll be okay if you have the right president. You have the wrong president, like her, honestly, you don't have a chance. When you look at the odds, when you look at the map, a map of the Middle East, Israel is a tiny little spot compared to these giant land masses. It's really a tiny spot. I actually said, is there any way of getting more? It's so tiny. It just doesn't look. It's amazing how it can defend itself. We must stand with our friend.
It's amazing it can defend itself from being a tiny landmass. Yeah, that could be the fact that every single nation has been blackmailed to sending military aid to build up this Iron Dome that's supposed to be undefeatable, by the way. This Iron Dome that was supposed to stop everything. But apparently it was not good enough to stop people in hang gliders and F-150s to storm in to a well-secured concert event. Someone try to explain that to me. Someone try to explain, because the schematics don't make sense. The math isn't all there. And yet we're still continuing to send money to this supposed nation that supposedly can defend itself, but really needs to blackmail other nations to send money constantly to keep going. It absolutely just does not make any sense. And a lot of it is not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to confuse you and make you feel guilty, because if you don't feel guilty and don't send their money and don't support this genocide, then you're automatically called an anti-Semite. They give you the reflex of an anti-Semite. Oh, you're a self-hating Jew. You're this, you're that. It's part of the religion, part of the history. It isn't. It isn't. Zionism is not Judaism. They're further apart from each other. In fact, Zionism is the anti-Semitism against Judaism. It's diminishing the Jewish faith. And the people that are Zionists come from all different backgrounds, come from all different religions. You can have Christian Zionists. You can have Catholic Zionists. Because it's not a formed religion. It's a political cult. It's a militarized coup cult used to exploit Palestinians, Lebanese, and all Middle Eastern territories so that they could seize control. And like RFK Jr. said, the reason we need to keep Israel alive, even RFK Jr., even though he's wrong about, his support for this, he's definitely on point when he says that it is an aircraft carrier. It is part of our military. It is part of our intelligence. We need Israel there because it keeps the eyes and ears on the rest of the Middle East so we can exploit those countries. And that's what they're doing right now. And Donald Trump is at the forefront of this because Donald Trump is another paid-off celebrity, is another paid-off politician. He is no different than any of them. I hate to break the news to you, mega, red hat people, but he is not going to be your savior. Just like Kamala Harris is not going to be a savior. It's a corrupt, evil system that has played you like sheep and will continue to do so unless we break out of that chain, unless we break out of that cycle, we break out of the duopoly. Because this duopoly has already been bought and paid for and so deeply corrupted that's corroded into every aspect of what these parties represent. And now, here's Donald Trump in full-on ghoul mode, full-on kind of mob boss mode, because now he needs to put the leverage onto people to make sure that Israel gets what they want. And because Israel lobbies, the Adelsons, and a bunch of other billionaire donors had paid to Donald Trump's campaign to expand more of Israel and continue more of this genocide, now Donald Trump has to put this ultimatum onto the people in the audience there. And listen what he says.
For Trump, if we don't have Jewish people voting for Republicans, including people in the House and including people in the Senate, you're not going to have Israel for very long. I'm telling you, you're not going to have it for very long. The other thing is this. You have many people that are Jewish people in this country that hate Israel. Somebody's got to teach these people that Israel is a good thing, not a bad thing. You have people at the New York Times run essentially.
Yeah, someone's got to go out and teach these people a lesson. The Hasidic Jews that are against Israel, that have read the Torah. We need to teach them a lesson, okay? We need to go out to the streets and teach them a lesson. Because Israel's a good thing. They're paying for my campaign. And we can't have Jewish people that are against Israel. You can't have that. We need to go out there and teach them a lesson.
By a Jewish family, and they hate Israel. They treat them so badly. I read articles, and now that I'm so into it, I read a lot, and I see things that you wouldn't have normally noticed. For Trump.
So basically, in a nutshell, what he's saying there is that if you don't elect me into office, he's, first of all, threatening the idea that Israel will not exist with Kamala Harris in office, which is an absolute lie. Kamala Harris is definitely on board in support of Israel, regardless of what you heard in the legacy media. Regardless of all these, we're going to have a ceasefire. It's never going to come to be. It's never going to come to be. Because even if they do a ceasefire, they're still sending munitions. They're still sending military aid equipment over to Israel to slaughter more people. They're sending more slush fund to the IDF. That's not stopping a war. That's adding more fuel to the fire. The only way to fully stop a war is to defund the warmongers that are perpetrating this war. You need to defund Netanyahu. You need to defund Israel. You need to stop the military aid. You got to stop them from blackmailing this country. That is how you stop this war. Because then the Israeli economy and its governance will crumble and will have to accept a peace deal. Have to accept some sort of diplomacy. But you don't do that when you give more to a bloodthirsty warmonger. You don't do that. That's like giving a serial killer more weapons and telling them to stop killing. That's not going to happen. So Donald Trump's making the false equivalency of saying that, if Kamala Harris gets in, well, you won't have an Israel, so you got to vote for me. But then he's also saying that if he doesn't make it into office, this is his little counterpoint here. If he doesn't make it into office, then he's going to use the excuse of, well, there's too many anti-Israel Jews out there that are threatening this. And it sounds like he's going to put the blame, if he doesn't get elected in November, he's going to put the blame on the Hasidic Jews and the Jews against Israel. The Jews that are actually for peace and for and for stopping the war machine. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like he is putting that burden onto them by saying, hey, if I don't get elected and I don't get into office, it's because of them. It's because they don't understand. We need to teach them a lesson. We need to go out and teach them a lesson about how great Israel is, how great this genocide is. Because it's flourishing his campaign. It's flourishing his politicians, just like the Democrats. They have bought the entire American political system. And no one bats an eye for that. No one cares about that. We have a meltdown if we hear something about Russia or China or Venezuela. But God forbid if someone ever mentions a word about Israel or Saudi Arabia having huge influence in the political culture here in North America. God forbid if someone does that. Then you're considered an anti-Semite. You're considered this. You're considered that. They go right to the reflex. Because they don't want to actually come forward with a mission that they are a corrupted regime that are blackmailing, that are bribing, that are doing this to continue and advance their bloodthirsty, tyrannical regime against oppressed people. And I'm not just saying Palestinians. I'm saying oppressed people even in Israel. People in Israel are getting beaten up by the IDF because they're not going along in support of Benjamin Netanyahu and his tyrannical militarized force. There's people that are protesting it, and they're getting beaten up by their own government. And yet you have Donald Trump, the game show host, former president, trying to run again and blindside you by saying how great Israel is. And you got to teach these people how great Israel is. I don't know. How do you teach someone that how great a government is when they're beating up people for having a peace negotiation and wanting to care about the hostages? Which I thought was the whole point of this. I thought the whole point was to defend the people of Israel on that horrific day to stop from getting more for getting the hostages. I thought that was the whole point of that. But they're not even mentioning the hostages at this point. Because it wasn't about that. It's about keeping this war going. And that's what they want. That is why Donald Trump is saying what he's doing here. And that is why I have to tell you guys, Donald Trump is not the lesser evil. He is not an outsider. He's just another form of evil, just with a different appearance. He is the different side of the same coin. And that coin is going to directly lead you to World War III. He may be right about Ukraine and Russia. He may be right about that. But anything else, he seems to be in the direction of the military-industrial complex. It seems like they finally scared him enough to go in that direction. And that is horrific to think about, regardless of whether you're a MAGA supporter or not.